The rookie 20-game winners today on Sunday Baseball. Once again, it's Sunday Baseball. Here's Indy. Many people think that wins as a measure of a pitcher's greatness is an overrated stat. And to a certain extent that's true because it's also a measure of how good your team is. I mean, if you're a pitcher, no matter how good or bad you are, you're going to win more games with these guys than you're going to win with these guys. But still, winning 20 games in a season is a pretty good thing, though it doesn't happen as often as it used to. Gone are the days when you could win 25, 30, or even 35 games in a season.
Or even 40.
No one's won more than 25 games since Bob Welch, and a whole lot of luck, went 27-6 in 1990. Now this shows you how wins can be a little misleading, since Welch had several other seasons when he was more effective on the mound, but he never won more than 17 games in any other season. No one won more games than that since Denny McLain won 31 in 1968.
Go Tigers!
But that was one of the biggest pitchers' years ever. No one's won more than 27 games in the National League since Robin Roberts went 28-7 with the Phillies in 1952. Now this was the beginning of 4 straight years that Roberts led the league in victories for teams that finished in 3rd or 4th place, but without Roberts probably would have finished on Mars. Pitching 300 innings a year for 6 straight years was so good for Roberts' arm that he soon began a streak of leading the league in losses and eventually began having marks like this one. Going back further, you have more 25 and 30 game winners and even 40 game winners.
As I said.
As you said, as you near the turn of the century, but I'm not going to talk about them today. Today, I'm going to talk about the rookies. More specifically, the rookie pitchers who not only won 20 games their rookie seasons, but also won 20 or more their 2nd or even 3rd seasons. No rookie pitchers won 20 games since Tom Browning did it in 1985, and it hadn't happened before that since Bob Grimm in 1954, although this guy came really close.
Go Tigers!
It happened a bit more often before World War II, most notably in 1937 when the Braves had 2 rookie 20-game winners. Now here's the thing about them. Both Jim Turner and Lou Fett were both in their 30s when they were rookie 20-game winners, and neither of them ever won 20 games again. Only 6 20th century pitchers managed to win more than 20 games in both their 1st and 2nd seasons. But first, here's Swedish Knock Knock Girl.
Knock knock.
Who's there?
Dazzy.
Dazzy who?
Dazzy know how stupid his name is? Knock knock.
Who's there?
Vance.
Vance who?
When somebody has a stupid name, I got to point it out.
That got better this time.
Thank you, Swedish Knock Knock Girl, for that in-depth analysis of the great Dazzy Vance. Boo Ferris, who went 21-10 and 25-6 for the Red Sox in 1945 and 1946 before arm injuries ruined his career. Now he is a real what might have been. Wes Farrell, who should be in the Hall of Fame but isn't, who went 21-10 and 25-13 when he broke in back in 1929. Tornado Jake Weimer, who went 20-8 and 20-14 when he broke in way back in 1903 and 1904. Russ Ford, who went 26-6, yes, 26-6 and 22-11 his first 2 years with the Yankees on the strength of his invention, the emery ball. Now, let's be very clear. The emery ball is the most devastating pitch ever invented. You might think of his cutter and his slider, but they pale in comparison to the emery ball. That's why it was the first pitch that was specifically banned in 1915, 5 years before the spitball was. Ford would scuff the ball with a piece of emery paper that he kept inside of his glove, and the ball would do, in his own words, a double curve. Okay, he kept his pitch really closely guarded because he was aware that without the emery ball, he was a below-average pitcher who was probably not even major league quality. He would go to his mouth before each pitch, so it looked like he was throwing a spitball, and that's what everybody believed. However, after a couple of years, the cat got out of the bag, and Cy Falkenberg learned how to throw the emery ball. Now here's an example of how the emery ball can change your game. Falkenberg was a below-average semi-starter on a bunch of crappy teams. He went out of the major leagues, went down to the minors, bounced around for a couple years, then he learned the emery ball and burst back into the major leagues, going 23-10 and 25-16. And then the emery ball was banned and, well, he wasn't any good, so he was out of baseball. Once Falkenberg had figured out the emery ball, other people were quick to adopt it too, and the pitch made its way to the National League, most likely through George Stallings, the manager of the Braves, who had been Ford's manager a couple of years earlier. Now, the Miracle Braves of 1914 are famous for being in last place on July 4th and then winning the World Series 3 months later. It's possible that the Braves did this because of the emery ball. Bill James, their star pitcher that year, was 26-7. He won 5 more major league games after the emery ball was banned. There's no proof that the Braves became the Miracle Braves through the magic of the emery ball, but it is something to think about.
That sounds fishy.
Spitballer Larry Chaney, who put up these records with the Cubs back in the teens. Now, Chaney is more impressive than the others because he won 20 games his first 3 full seasons, and the other one, other than Chaney, is one of my favorite players of all time. His parents must have been ancient Romans or something, because they named him Silvanus Augustus, but his last name was just plain Greg. Veen Greg. Ever heard of him? I guess not, unless you're old and from Cleveland, who voted him greatest lefty in franchise history in 1969, because Veen Greg was an old Indians star. Here's why he was cooler than Chaney. Now, before Chaney had his run of 20-game seasons, he had actually been up in the majors the year before and pitched 3 games. But Greg had 3 straight 20-game seasons from the day he entered the major league. He was a huge sensation when he broke in, going 18-3 by the end of July and leading the majors in ERA. And everybody, Hal Chase, Ty Cobb, Christy Mathewson, everybody said this guy was one of the best lefties in the history of baseball. But every single year he would have recurring arm pains towards the end of the season, and this year was no exception. He didn't pitch at all after September 4th. His next 2 seasons were pretty much the same thing, only with more pain. He'd start off the season fantastically, and he'd do things like throw 32 straight scoreless innings, but come August and come September, he'd be once again a sore-armed pitcher. However, he did manage to squeak into the 20 winner circle both times with identical 20 and 13 marks. His arm problems eventually got him out of the major leagues, but he did have a comeback in the early 20s when he suddenly rediscovered his form, and in the Pacific Coast League had a 25-win season, which earned him a very unlikely return to the major leagues at the age of 40. According to everybody who saw him pitch, Veen Greg had more stuff than anybody, and it's a real wonder what might have been if they'd ever been able to figure out why he kept getting sore arms each and every single year. But still, the greatest lefty in Cleveland history, which should make my friend Christine very happy, because every time I mention anything positive about Cleveland, it makes Christine happy.
Go Indians.
Thank you, Larry. Anyway, here's a big salute going out to the 20-game rookies. We'll see you next week with more Sunday Baseball. Sunday Baseball is shot every week at Larry's Corner in Stockholm, Sweden. And yes, it's Larry in the show's shop, and you can buy all kinds of cool stuff there. Look for Larry's Corner on Facebook. For naked pictures of Swedish Knock Knock Girl, follow Sunday Baseball on Twitter.
Yeah.